Just realized I forgot my water. I'll be back in 1 sec.
Dance, slurp, burp, break, dance, burp, swerp, shake, dance, slurp, burp, break, dance, swerp, burp, shake, dance, slurp, burp, break, dance, burp, swerp, shake, dance, slurp, burp, break, dance, swerp, earthquake.
Now I got my water. All right, so look, folks, I may be overdoing it just the tiniest bit on vocal use these days. Try to fight it off, try to put it off, try to just power through. And at a certain point, you realize maybe it's a bit much. Good news is I don't have any play-by-play gigs until January. So that'll take a little bit of the strain off. But just looking back at this week, for instance, we did 2 shows on Monday, 2 shows on Tuesday, 2 shows on Wednesday, 1 show on Thursday, 2 shows on Friday. And then I had 2 basketball games to call on Thursday and 2 basketball games to call on Saturday. And that's probably just too much. You roll it all together and it's something like 2, 4, 6, 7, 9, 11, 13, 14. It's about 14-ish hours of yelling. So anyway, woke up this morning and just everything through the neck up into the lower jaw was swollen and tight. But I got to get a show out because tomorrow I will be playing hooky for a day. I'll be honest with you guys, straight hooky. We promised our older kid for his birthday in November, he could either have a giant party with all of his friends, which, you know, my wife and I were not so secretly crossing our fingers. He'd be like, no, we don't need to do that because he's got elementary school friends and friends left over from preschool and a bunch of friends from Little League and then their parents. And if you throw a party like that, suddenly you're at like 100 people in your apartment courtyard and realizing, oh my God, what have we done? Or your other option was pick one friend and go to Disneyland. And that's what he chose. And so that's tomorrow, meaning we got to get tomorrow's stuff done today. That's what this show is. Normally we do 2 shows on Monday. We're going to roll them all into one episode right here, right now. A weekend recap show and a look at the week ahead. So welcome everyone to a combo episode of Fantasy NBA Today. I know everybody's sort of getting settled in for football right now. NFL kicks off in about 45 minutes. So any of you that are hanging out live, I do appreciate it. I don't expect many of you to be here on Sunday morning. It's a weird time to do a fantasy basketball show, especially when the in-season tournament just finished up yesterday. Congratulations to LeBron and the Lakers for winning the first ever NBA Cup. It was actually pretty cool. As a Laker fan, it was doubly cool to see that team kind of humming right now. Very cool to see kind of a Tyrese Halliburton coming out party over the last little bit. Not that like we degenerates didn't know, but the universe didn't, and now they do. But again, all that rolled together, this isn't exactly like prime time for fantasy basketball right now. But I want to get the show out. I want to get it going. Hell, you know, on top of everything else, it might be kind of an interesting way for us to figure out if doing some of these Monday content episodes earlier is actually a good idea. Like maybe getting it posted sooner is useful for folks. So in every event, we're throwing some darts at the wall and we'll see if any of them stick today. So again, thank you to anybody who's hanging out live, anybody that's watching or listening after the fact. Please take a moment to like, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let's dive straight in and do our weekend recap. Normally it's a reverse chronological lightning round, but every single weekend game happened on Friday. There were no fantasy games that counted on Saturday or Sunday. So there is no reverse chronology to any of this. It's just a Friday recap at this point. And then we'll take a look at sort of the streaming plan basically for the week ahead, which is actually a very busy week. Most teams in the NBA have 4 games this coming week because everybody had 2. So the assumption is that everybody's pretty well rested other than the Lakers and the Pacers. And so the NBA has us sort of diving into a big, fat, thick week 8 And that makes streaming actually less important because everybody should have a pretty relatively equal number of games played. But we'll get to that in a minute. First things first. First of all, find me over on social at Dan Vespers. I think I forgot to throw that in there, but you guys can do that as well. Toronto at Charlotte. Raptors are starting to come apart a little bit. Scotty Barnes was able to power to them to some wins early in the season that maybe they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. They now lost 3 games in a row, including this one to a team that they very much should not have lost to. They're now 9-13, the 11 seed, which I get it. You're still only a half game out of a play-in spot, but with every loss, the Raptors inch closer to being a sell team. And that's something we'll want to keep tabs on both for reality and for fantasy purposes, because we've known Pascal Siakam and Gary Trent have been on the trade block for quite some time. Trent is the sort of easier piece to move there, but Siakam is the more relevant one. As far as fantasy goes, there's basically nothing with the Raptors all the time. They're a very predictable club. Dennis Schroeder's fall off, he's now down to number 130 on the year, was, I thought, predictable. And then admittedly, I thought maybe I got it way wrong when he started a top 50 clip for 2 weeks, but he has now settled back into where we knew he would be. And I feel, again, very much less stupid about calling him I think I said he was going to be outside the top 120, 150 range, and that's exactly where he is now. The great leveling. It levels us all. As far as the Charlotte side goes, that's arguably the more interesting side. We got a kind of a good report on LaMelo Ball over the weekend that he was going to be evaluated at some point this coming week. They expected him to miss at least one more week. But the fact that they didn't say, at least another 2 or 3, I thought was good news, because we know his ankles are busted. And so anytime it's like, all right, he's not that far away, I take that as a positive. Meantime, Nick Richards actually outplayed Mark Williams in this game. Williams likely kind of playing through a lower back injury, and the time off is going to be nice for him. So don't read too much into that. Richards is an excellent backup center, but he's not going to get all that many minutes when Williams is fully healthy. Otherwise, PJ Washington is sort of your fringe guy on this team. He's the one I've been going back and forth about. The story right now is to start the starters with Charlotte. Brandon Miller, Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier, Miles Bridges, if you're willing to, and Mark Williams, I think, when this team comes back out of the multi-day layoff. Detroit lost again at Orlando, and it was ugly. Jalen Duren is out for at least 2 weeks after his latest ankle situation. Marvin Bagley got the start in this ball game, and then he left partway with, you can see it on your screen if you're watching the YouTube version, back spasms. I'll tell you right now, I have no idea what Detroit is going to do at center. If I was the Pistons, I would probably just slide Isaiah Stewart up to the 5 and run small. But you might see James Wiseman, who did actually get to play 16 minutes in this ball game. He's terrible. Not a good basketball player. Neither is Marvin Bagley. So I'm probably not picking up Wiseman outside of points leagues. That would be the spot you'd consider it. If Stewart slides up to the 5, he actually probably is a 12-teamer across the board. That's been his issue, is playing the 4, because it doesn't allow him to get that many rebounds. And as the 5, you get more boards, you get better looks on offense, you're closer to the rim, you get more defensive stats on the defensive side. Duh. So, we'll kind of wait and see on that one. We'll get a Detroit report, presumably before their next ball game, which, again, doing this show on Sunday makes it a little tougher on me. But just kind of stay piped in on that. Killian Hayes is the hold. There was all this bluster going into this game in Orlando about how Jaden Ivey was going to get to play more, and he very much did not play more. So hold Killian Hayes just to kind of see how this thing shakes out. If you guys want my honest opinion on this, I don't think that Hayes ends up as a rest of season guy. But if he's running hot for a little bit, which he kind of is, maybe that secures him enough playing time in the short term. So hang tight. By the way, I'm not playing him in roto leagues right now. I'm too nervous about what he might do to various percentages. Head to head, he does make sense. On the Orlando side, Jalen Suggs did not play in this ball game. I mean, when he went down, I thought it was going to be a while, but they're making it seem like it's not going to be all that long. So I guess that's good. We mentioned Gary Harris as steals and threes streamer, and he did have 2 of each of those in this ball game. So, whatever. Goga Batadze just hammer dunking all over the Pistons was kind of the ultimate uh, in indignity, if you whatever you want to call it, on that Piston side. But we've seen enough of this Patadze versus Mo Wagner thing to know that anytime either one of them looks like they're getting something going, it immediately fizzles out. So just leave that crap alone. Cole Anthony's going to get all he can handle here while Suggs is out. And that's probably the only player you're really looking at in all formats. Atlanta was without Trae Young for this ball game, so I think you had a pretty good feeling that they weren't going to beat the 76ers. Bogdan Bogdanovic got the start. He played 39 minutes, which, great fantasy-wise, but also yikes. I don't know how his knees possibly hold up to that for more than 1 or 2 days of ball games. I actually much prefer Bogdanovic playing 25, 26 minutes and just going buck wild off the bench and trying to keep him upright. Now, again, 1 or 2 of these ball games, terrific. I'm very nervous. He's been great. You're just going with it. If you can sell on Bogdanovic, I think I would, just not because his production's going to change all that much, but because his health could. Meantime, the Hawks just badly need, obviously, Trae Young, but also they really need Jalen Johnson back, and he's still multiple weeks away. Sadiq Bey's a start. Okongwu was better in this ballgame. He blocked a couple of shots, did have 5 fouls in 18 minutes, such as life when Joel Embiid is on the other side of the floor. But you guys know our feelings on Okongwu, which is hold as long as you possibly can. Embiid has gone pretty crazy lately, too. He's shoved himself into the number 2 spot behind Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in overall boards, basically in a dead heat with Tyrese Halliburton. Meanwhile, Nikola Jokic has been shooting the ball so poorly lately, he's fallen down behind Anthony Davis into the 5 hole. I really do. I do feel like, and we talked about this leading up to the season, the championship hangover is real. It's a real thing. Anyway, not even the point. Sixers, obviously, Embiid, Maxey, Melton, these guys are all easy starts. Tobias Harris should be bouncing back at some point soon. Oubre up to 23 minutes here in his second game back. Make sure he's not on the wire because he was very good prior to his injury. Let's keep on moving. Wizards, womp womp, another blowout. At least Tyus Jones did get 28 minutes, so that was something. I don't fully understand how the minutes are being distributed on this ball club, but, anytime Jones gets basically above about 25, 26, he's fine. I think this game may have actually pushed Tyus back inside the top 100 in 9-cat. Yeah, he's 96 now, which I get it. Top 100 is sort of an arbitrary marker, but this is why. And everybody was like, can I drop Tyus Jones? And I'm like, no, you can't. Because if he gets 26, 27 minutes or more, he's a fantasy play in all formats. Trying to figure out when the Wizards are going to get blown out is a task in and of itself, but this is it. Coulibaly had a double-double, 11 and 10, but bad free throws, no real peripheral stats. You guys know my feeling on him. He's a guy that I stashed in a keeper league because I think he'll be good when the Wizards lean into the full tank, which I know to say that they're not in full tank right now is distressing, but they're still playing 2 or 3, what you call like NBA veterans. And at some point, even those guys aren't going to get to go. And then Bilal is going to have free reign. But 6 shots just isn't enough. He needs to do more. We need him doing more. You want to stash for 2 or 3 months? Be my guest. I'm not in redraft spots. And then I don't know how many times I have to yell that Kyle Kuzma is a sell high, but he's down to number 82 now. Again, there's this rosy lens around him because he's scoring 23 points with 6 boards and 4.5 assists. And so people are willing to overlook the fact that he gets no defensive stats and his percentages are running above career norms. But as all of that stuff comes back down, so does Kuz. I like his usage. He's typically getting enough minutes to put up value, which is good on a team where minutes haven't really been guaranteed yet. But you got to try to lock in. Like, I still, he's ranked in the 80s on Basketball Monsters 9-cap board. I think you can probably trade him for someone near or even above where he's at. And I would definitely do that. Oh, also on the Bilal front, DeLon Wright should be back in the next 2 weeks. And that'll be a thorn. Spencer Dinwiddie was someone that I've been sort of watching to see if he can hang tough. And he was better in this ball game. Wizards defense certainly helps. And 4 steals helps as well. But that was a good sign for him. Cam Thomas, when he turns cold, he turns very cold. He's actually fallen outside the top 100 now. And again, it's this whole thing, like, people see the 24 points per game and they just totally overlook everything else. He doesn't rebound. He doesn't pass. He doesn't get many defensive stats. He's not horrible at those right now, but he's become a pretty big negative in field goal percent because of volume. He's a hold. Cam Thomas is a hold. But when he goes on one of his mega heaters, he'll score 30 for a couple games in a row. He's probably a guy you try to move in those situations. No other big thoughts on this one. Cam Johnson had a slower ball game. He'll be fine. This game was a blowout, and some guys get their stuff in a blowout before a game gets out of hand, and some guys don't. Dennis Smith Jr. had been playing kind of well. He missed this ball game. He's questionable for the next one with some back stuff, though we'll keep an eye on it. Knicks and Celtics had kind of a fun one, but this game ended closer than it actually was. Celtics were able to pull away kind of midway through. I think it was in the third quarter. They opened it up. The Knicks, and this is a Thibodeau special, played the starters at the end for unknown reasons, and Jalen Brunson tweaked an ankle at the end of the ball game, which is just like, and the guys that cover the Knicks are good at what they do. The media coverage these days. There are some teams where the media coverage is just like 99% slobbing, which is just atrocious, man. Like, we need people that are actually going to dig in and get information. The Knicks guys do that. They do a good job. They'll pick the team apart, good or bad. It's always getting analyzed. So thank goodness for that. And they're giving Thibodeau hell for leaving Brunson in a game that was basically decided. Now, the fantasy good news there is that if Brunson has to miss a game, and again, we won't really know until the Knicks' next ball game gets closer, downside to doing this show early, is Emmanuel Quickley would be an obvious start. He's a great fill-in for Brunson. I don't even know if he'd be in the starting lineup, but his usage would be so high that he would get an opportunity. Also, Mitchell Robinson left this ball game. He did come back, but Isaiah Hartenstein, you can see on your board if you're watching, he played 29 minutes and had a huge fantasy line. If Mitch Rob has to miss any time, a healthy Hartenstein this year would be a very easy fill-in choice as well. And then Josh Hart, who we're like, he's perma watch list, had 6, 6, and 7 in 27 minutes. And again, that's just not quite enough for me. Not quite enough. More of a schedule play than anything else. But keep an eye on some of these Knicks possible fill-ins. But also, Dante DiVincenzo got the start for Quentin Grimes and didn't do anything. Shuffling along. Kristaps Porzingis came back for the Celtics and was very good. Al Horford had a double-double off the bench. He played some extra minutes because Jaylen Brown got ejected. I love Al Horford. I would love to tell you to keep playing him, but you shouldn't. This was more fluky than anything else. Typically, his minutes are in the low to mid-20s off the bench. That's not going to be enough for Al on the day-to-day. He's a guy you obviously drop in when Porzingis is out, but when KP is healthy, that's going to be a no. Minnesota blew out Memphis. No trouble here, despite the fact that Anthony Edwards left early with a re-aggravation of his hip injury. Nickeil Alexander-Walker picked up a few extra shots in the mess. Troy Brown Jr. picked up a few extra shots. You're not playing either of those guys on the roto side. You are playing Naz Reid right now while he's getting 23, 24 minutes a game because he is a fantasy stat magnet. Whenever he can get out there, at some point he'll kind of cool off again, but he's a go. Gobert is on a heater right now. He's making his free throws, and so everything then floats up the board with him. Mike Conley's been wonderful. The choices right now in Minnesota are relatively straightforward, so we don't need to spend much time on it. As I think are the choices in Memphis. Jaren Jackson Jr. has been playing better. This is another decent ball game for JJJ. Desmond Bane slowed down a little bit, but who cares? He's been fine. And you're basically not playing anyone else other than maybe like big-time reach on Santi Aldama, who I do have stashed in one or two spots. But, with Tillman back now, Smart should be back in the next week or two. Josh should be back in the next week and a half or so. It's really going to upend everything with this team. And so I don't know that you really need to hold on to anybody other than JJJ and Bane on the Grizzlies right now, at least in terms of like who's playing, because they're going to have all these dudes coming back. And those are the guys you'll end up looking at, and everything gets sort of thrown into the blender at that point. Cavs were without Evan Mobley and Karis LeVert for this win in Miami. It didn't really change much fantasy-wise. Dean Wade got the start for Mobley and did nothing. Max Strus had a poor shooting game, but he still got 17 shots, so I ain't complaining. And then, the main guys were the ones that did the damage. Move on from that one. The Heat, Orlando Robinson got played off the floor a little bit in this ball game. I still think that if Bam and Highsmith miss another one, you play Robinson, because you can see even in 20 minutes, his fantasy game is very, very intriguing. He gets assists, he gets rebounds, he gets points, he gets defensive stats. He can actually space the floor a little bit, although it didn't hit any threes in this one. The Heat are a streaming gold mine, other than apparently Duncan Robinson in this ball game, who had one of the worst fantasy lines of the entire season. It was like somebody whacked him in the face right before the game. He had 1 point on 1 out of 2 free throws, so it took a miss to get there. 1 assist, 0 of 7 shooting, and 6 turnovers in 23 minutes. Again, maybe the worst fantasy line anybody's put up all season long. That said, he's been a good stream with Tyler Hero out, despite this horrendous ball game. I know it's hard to sort of deep swallow that one down. Kevin Love played 28 minutes out of the blue in this game. I don't know why, really. I know the game got ugly, so Spo was kind of mixing and matching a little, but you're not playing Kevin Love. Josh Richardson had a nice game off the bench. Again, not a guy you're playing in Roto. It's too dangerous. Lowry's a guy you can stream while everybody's hurt. Orlando Robinson is a guy you can stream while everybody's hurt. I know it's crazy to say Duncan Robinson after this game, but he is. And then lately, Caleb Martin has kind of supplanted Jaime Jaquez Jr. as the safer kind of wingy stream for the Heat. Because when Caleb starts running hot, he takes more shots, he gets threes, and that's the difference for him. Because he can get a few rebounds, a few assists. He'll just be out there long enough to get them. The issue is he going to take any shots? And right now, when he's warmer, he'll take them. There's this aggression thing with Caleb that comes and goes. So he's a stream right now. But if we get to tomorrow or whatever the hell the Heat's next ball game is, I have misplaced my pants. The Heat's next game is indeed tomorrow, Monday in Charlotte. And if we get a report that Bam's back and Highsmith is back, then that shakes up the whole front court. Martin, I wouldn't play. Jaquez, I certainly wouldn't play. Orlando Robinson, you definitely don't play. And if Hero's back, then you bench Duncan Robinson. So there's a lot that could change between today and tomorrow, but that's where things stand for Miami right now. Warriors lost to the Thunder in overtime. The good news for the Warriors here is they finally let Jonathan Kuminga play a little bit. And he played a bunch in the second half of the previous ball game, and he fouled out in 29 minutes of this one. He's very much a speculative ad. Maybe the most interesting thing that happened over the weekend was sort of this emergence of Kuminga. And I don't know what Steve Kerr is going to do on the day-to-day, but if you're in a keeper or dynasty format, Kuminga needs to be on a team post haste, because the Warriors are getting real old. And whether they like it or not, he is their future. I don't think that they like it, actually, but that's the honest to goodness truth. So he needs to be on rosters if you're in any kind of format that extends beyond this season. And even in redraft right now, I think there's a case to be made to pick him up and just kind of see how this thing goes. Chris Paul's been out. Gary Payton's going to be out for a while yet. And so, all that could mess things up. And if Andrew Wiggins ever decides to wake up a little bit, that could change things. If Draymond Green doesn't foul out in 35 minutes, maybe that changes things a little bit. But overall, it feels like Steve Kerr's thinking, I got to switch something up, because the usual crap just is not working right now. Does that mean that Kuminga is going to get another chance in the next ball game? It does not mean that necessarily, but he's played well in this one, and he played great in the second half of their previous game. And I feel like that's kind of earning him a little bit of trust and a little bit more leash, and we'll see how it goes. So I say add Kuminga, keep him on your bench if you're in a roto. Don't spend a games cap on it until you see how this whole thing plays out. But head to head, you might as well spend a move when someone like this pops up that could actually be a rest of season name. Could. I don't know. What do I think the percentages are? 10, 15%. But, mid-December, that's actually kind of a high number for could a guy be a rest of season dude. Most of the moves we're making right now are injury replacement guys, where it's basically a 0% chance someone's going to be rest of season value, and Kuminga is better than 0. I don't think anything's going to happen to Clay. I think Wiggins has a chance to get benched at some point, although they still like his defense, but overall he's just been such a gross negative for them. We saw Looney lose a bunch of playing time here in favor of Saric and Kuminga. So things are shifting a little bit, and we should pay attention. Meanwhile, the Jalen Williams freight train has officially left the station. Hopefully, everybody had a chance to buy low on Jalen Williams because he's now up to number 68, and he still hasn't even gotten his steals number up that much. This is a dude who can roll top 30 when things are really cooking, and hopefully everybody bought low. Chet Holmgren, still trucking, man. What an amazing start to his year. He's number 10 in 9-cat right now. That's grotesquely amazing. And then Shea's crazy, but let's keep moving here. Chicago, Alex Caruso played 19 minutes and left early. This is the Alex Caruso story in a nutshell. DeMar is going to have to do a lot on offense. Vooch, Kobe White, these are the guys that are going to get all the usage for the Bulls. With Zach LaVine out, that's been enough to get Kobe White cooking. It's been very close to enough to get Patrick Williams cooking. But now if Caruso has to miss their next ball game, that's probably enough to make Patrick Williams a start independent of the other stuff. We'd need DeMar out to get down to Dosunmu on the fill-in train. But the Bulls are, I would say they're playing better, but also this was the Spurs, who are in a dogfight for the worst team in the league honors right now. So, don't give too much credit, but Bulls are playing a little bit better. Spurs decided to try Wemby at the 5, and it was pretty cool. He had a 20-20 game. Zach Collins came off the bench, 23 minutes for Collins. He actually had a damn efficient ball game, actually, so hold on to him. Trey Jones got 28 minutes. If that happens again, you got to add him everywhere. If it doesn't, then don't. One time is not enough for me to buy that this is like a legit thing. Sohan went back into the starting lineup after one game on the bench. Devin Vassell starting again. Keldon Johnson had another one of his efficient games. You guys know my feelings on the Spurs, and everybody can help me for it, or can crush me for it. Keldon Johnson, to me, basically anytime he has a really good shooting game, you try to sell for someone who's ranked near him, which has been this year between like 65 and 80. And then Vassell is kind of the same story. He's down to 85. I just felt like his field goal percent was never going to stay where it was, and it's already starting to come down. Spurs are frustrating. If they would just turn Trey Jones loose, he'd be a really fun guy to pick up off most wires. And, if you have a dead spot on your team, you could pick him up from this ball game and just see what happens. I think for many of us that need our roster spots, I kind of want to see it happen one more time. Let's keep trucking here. We got a lot to cover. Rockets beat the Nuggets. Not much to talk about from a fantasy standpoint in this ball game. Dylan Brooks had one of his better games. He really seems to be a focus-dependent fantasy play. When the Rockets have a big game, Dylan Brooks seems like he cares. And then the rest of the time, he just sort of lets everybody else do it. Freddie VanVleet still can't get any steals. It's the darndest thing. I mean, he's having a perfectly fine fantasy season, but, he's in the 40s. It's not the end of the world. Field goal percent is not going to come up that much. It's all steals for him right now. If the steals would come around, he'd bounce up into the 20s and 30s. Some of it might just be scheme, I guess. Maybe he's not going to get into the mid to high ones, but I can't believe he's under one steal at the end of this season. That would floor me. Jamal Murray got ejected. No other notes on the Denver side other than Jokic is in kind of the first shooting funk of his career. Could you buy low on Nikola Jokic right now? I mean, possibly. But we did call the championship hangover. No one should be too surprised by this. It's finally hitting. Kings beat the Zombie Suns in a game that they frankly should have won. Keegan Murray is the only story there. Malik Monk's minutes continue to trend up, but we've called him an ad for a few weeks in a row now, so that doesn't change. Keegan's a buy low. He fouled out in 30 minutes here. He's very good, and he's just going to keep getting better. Suns were without Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant. Both are getting very close now, though. There's a hope that Bradley Beal could actually play at some point this week. KD, it sounded like this was a pretty short-term thing. He tweaked an ankle against their IST game against the Lakers, and so I think they figured they'd just give him this one off and give him like 5 days to recover. So I think we see Kevin Durant back pretty soon. If he happens to miss another one, Eric Gordon is your obvious stream. He played 38 minutes. That actually led the team more than Booker. Booker's going to do a ton while superstars are out. He'll do quite a lot even when they start to come back. At some point, we'll actually see what this team is with all three of their guys, but it hasn't been yet. Clippers beat the Jazz, which has been kind of hard for them historically, but it shouldn't be because the Jazz are terrible this year. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard had bigger games. James Harden slowed down a tiny bit, but there's really nothing fantasy-wise here other than my continued watch list of Norman Powell, and this was a bad Norman Powell game. So move on to Utah. John Collins, huge ball game. He hadn't had one of these in a while, so this was a nice little bit of a John Collins wake-up day that pushed him back into the 90 range for the year. Good. He's a hold. Walker Kessler back into the starting five. We put him on our buy low board while he was coming off the bench because we knew people were starting to get frustrated. He ain't going to be frustrated for long now. He's going to crush from now basically until the end of time. And you guys know how I feel about Keontae George and Jordan Clarkson. I don't think Jordan Clarkson has ever come close to being a true 9-cat guy. So no, Keontae, he's not that dissimilar from Koulibaly in my eyes, where, maybe it starts to make sense around the All-Star break, but just too many fantasy inefficiencies here. And I got people yelling at me about this one too. Oh, Dan, you're going to regret this call. I don't think that's true. I feel like people put way too much stock in what a player does in March. Keontae George might be good in March. I've said that before. I'll say it again. I can't stash him for that long. I'm in competitive leagues. I can't have someone who's physically dragging my team down for 2.5 months on the hope that he's better at the end of that timeline. I just can't. It's too much to ask. Hopefully Larry Markkinen will be back soon because the Jazz need him badly, and they are ugly to watch without him. Dallas beat Portland on the road. Kyrie Irving had kind of a scary foot injury. I forget, it was Dwight Powell fell on it. I think so. I think it was a teammate. I can't remember exactly. I had somebody in my Twitter mentions that was like, he's for sure it's broken. There's a good chance it's fractured. I can sell him now. I'm like, well, pump your brakes there, kiddo. Turns out to be a heel contusion, which, these bruises can take some time to heal. We might see him miss a week or two, but it doesn't sound like it's super serious. They're not going to rush him back because the Mavs are in very good position already, so expect him to miss a few ball games at least, but, not the end of the world. The sky hath not fallen. But the current missing players for the Mavs have opened up some kind of interesting streaming possibilities. Grant Williams missed this one. He might be back for the next ball game. Josh Green is out for a few weeks yet. So, first of all, Derek Lively is a start, regardless of all this other stuff. But Derek Jones Jr. is a start while all these other wings are out. With Kyrie going down, Tim Hardaway Jr. probably bounces back up into startable because he's just going to get enough shots to be useful, as you saw in this one. He had 20 points and 4 threes. He doesn't do anything else, but that's enough, and he can probably get enough when Kyrie's not there. And then we've had a couple games in a row from Dante Exum. And look, I'll be the first to admit that this feels like a not sustainable thing going on for Exum. But, who the hell knows? He's been really hot. He's had 7 assists in 2 games in a row. Maybe that's going to be his role. I'm not adding him. He's going to get picked up in a lot of spots after one big ball game. And, maybe he ends up putting together a little stretch here while Kyrie's out. But it does not feel like a thing that's going to last for very long. I just can't possibly imagine that Dante Exum magically became a fantastic basketball player overnight after like a decade of not. But we've talked about it before. Playing a guy on a heater is not the worst idea in the world. I'm just not confident enough to go that direction, especially when you can go after a Derek Jones Jr. who steps into bigger roles every time someone goes down, and then Hardaway, who they'll need to do some scoring here. Meanwhile, Luka took 28 shots in this game, as if his usage wasn't high enough already. Now it's going to be even crazier. For Portland, I think we probably see DeAndre Ayton back after their kind of long layoff from this ball game, Saturday, Sunday. It's not that long, I guess. Maybe he misses another one. Brogdon, Jeremy Grant, these guys are all out right now. The Blazers are a super weird fantasy team to track when 3 starters are down. Because Scoot, coming off the bench, is playing starter's role, but he's still sort of NBA terrible. He hasn't figured out the game yet. Anthony Simons is back. Thank goodness for that. He took 21 shots, and he's going to destroy points leagues while everybody's hurt. He'll be good enough in 9-cat also, but this is a guy who's, like I said on our last show, I think on Friday, He could legit average 4 3-pointers a game this year, and he had 4 in this ball game. So that's fun. Shaden Sharp is going to do a ton while all of these guys are hurt. And then the one that we talked about on Friday's show, which was I don't know if Matisse Thybulle is going to get guaranteed 30 minutes, but if he does, you got to start him. And he did in this one. And so I think if all 3 of those starters are out again, you start Sharp, Simons, and Thybulle. And that's probably as far as I go. Toumani Camara would be the next closest. He's a maybe. But we don't know that much about his fantasy game to say yes or no on that one. And then Reith is a no for me because it doesn't seem like his minutes are guaranteed, even in that starter spot. You may have to sort of rejigger things if say Brogdon's back. That my guess would be that actually takes Thybulle out of the starting 5. But maybe it bumps Kamara. Feel it out a little bit. I think Grant probably misses another one, but we can't again know until we get closer. That was everybody that played over the weekend, and I'm not going to do a Monday night preview on today's show, but I am going to talk a little bit about the week ahead before we wrap things up. No questions on today's either. Again, I got to make sure that I rest my voice. This coming week is a very, very heavy games week. I think it's one of the most populated weeks of the sort of non-playoff fantasy season. No one has 2 games this week. Like even next week, we go back to someone having a 2-game week. I think the Suns have a 2-game week, not this coming week, but the following one. This week, almost everybody has 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams have 3 games. Those teams are the Lakers, which frankly, they earned it by playing in the finals. But the Pacers actually have a 4-game week. Sorry, Indy. Grizzlies have 3. Wolves have 3. Thunder have 3. The Thunder have the craziest schedule so far this year. They're lagging way behind a lot of teams in games played. Don't worry, it'll make up. Orlando has 3 and Toronto has 3. So if you somehow have a team that's overloaded in those 6 teams, you're going to be at a games disadvantage this week. But otherwise, the game should be relatively equal, which means that streaming is both harder and also at the same time not quite as necessary. Because you're talking about, if you have a 13-player league and, 24 out of the 30 teams, that's 80% of the league is going 4 games this week. You can just sort of in your mind say, okay, on average, what's 80% of 4? 3.2. So on average, every player on your team is going to be going 3.2 times this week. You got 13 players, 39. 13 times 3 is 39. 13 times 0.2 is 2.6. That's 41.6 games for your team this week. That's a high number for a given week. It's usually high 30s. So every, partial game you add to that doesn't actually change things quite as much. It's 2%, 2.5%. Now, you can still try to stream because you have the weekend to prepare. And if you didn't use all your moves up from last week, you can go for somebody on, say, Chicago, Cleveland, Dallas, Denver, the Clippers, the Kings. They all have a back-to-back Monday, Tuesday to start this week, so that gets you off to a quick start. If you wanted to go back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday, that's Brooklyn. Miami has a back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday, Utah. And then if you wanted to go back-to-back Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday, there's a lot of those as well. Atlanta has a back-to-back Friday, Saturday. Detroit is Friday, Saturday. Charlotte's Friday, Saturday. Golden State is Saturday, Sunday. Indy is Friday, Saturday. Milwaukee's Saturday, Sunday. The Knicks, the Sixers, Friday, Saturday. And Portland is Saturday, Sunday. So there's a lot of options of back-to-backs. But again, as you make these moves, you might not actually be gaining a game for the rest of the week. Because there are only 6 teams that have a 3-game week. So I want you to be somewhat cautious about how you use your moves. I think the best thing to think about here is to treat this a little bit like a playoff week, but not as critical as a playoff week, meaning you can, you want to make sure that you leave a move or two in case someone on your team gets hurt. Because the only thing that's really going to blow you up is if one of your 4 gamers turns into a 0. That's where you get really hurt. If you use a bunch of your moves at the beginning of the week and you don't have one to cover it, if you start to get 0s midweek, that's how you end up at a game's disadvantage. So yes, I think you can stream this week. I think it's smart to actually use whatever moves you have for this coming week today. Make sure you use all of your moves up for this last week that's ending, because Like, there's no point in taking one into the next week with you. But I also don't think that going mega stream crazy is going to be that helpful this week, because whatever you do, it's a short-term thing, because like half the league goes 4 times the first 6 days. So instead, this week, look at what maybe some of the low tide days are. And there aren't that many of them, mind you. Again, like, this is a games heavy week, but there are a couple of days that are a little bit lower tide. Monday is a massive games day. Tuesday only has 5. Thursday actually has 7, so it's a relatively busy day. Friday has 8. Saturday is pretty busy. Sunday has only 5. So, like, I would argue that Tuesday and Sunday are the ones where maybe you can make a little headway, save a move or two for the end of the week to try to bulk up that Sunday. Monday is an overload day in a big, big way. Monday is, I think, 12 or 13 games played. Wednesday is 9. So again, like, you can stream and you probably won't hit too many overloads, but just know that at the end of the week, your games played and your opponents are probably going to be relatively tight. Best strategy, without talking in circles too much, use moves right now to get some Monday, Tuesday back-to-backs. If your Monday is already overloaded, you could actually aim for a Tuesday through Sunday type of team, somebody that plays Tuesday and has 4 games from that point on. Boston is a team that goes Tuesday through Sunday and has 4 games. Try to remember these teams as I list them. The Warriors are another one. The Suns are another one. Those are the 3 teams that have 4 games Tuesday through Sunday. So if you're looking at the long streaming plan, that's the way to do it. The Suns also go back-to-back Tuesday, Wednesday, so that makes them interesting in that regard. Suns are a really good team to grab on that one. If you feel like you want to make more moves starting on Thursday, and they're Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I don't know. Are there any teams that go 3 times Thursday through Sunday? Warriors, I think, might be the only one. Warriors and Blazers. So if you start with the Suns, say on Tuesday, you take their back-to-back, then you switch to Warriors, Blazers. That's a good way to use 1 or 2 moves on each of those days. And you can sort of squeeze out an extra 2, 3, 4 streams on the week, where your opponents are probably going to do some streaming, but what they're not going to realize is that they're not really adding that many games for their whole week, because they're going to switch off of one team to another, but then that team might not have a great schedule after that. So they'll have to use another move to get back to a better team again. I'll try to put some of this stuff on social maybe later on today. People can dig through it. But that's the general streaming strategy for this week. We're not going to go through the sort of game time call, guys, because today is Sunday. That's not going to help you. We're not going to have that information until late Monday afternoon, because the games start. Indy at Detroit kicks things off tomorrow. And then almost all the games, what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It is a 13-game Monday, but 11 of the 13 games are going by 5 o'clock Pacific time. So you'll have a lot of the game time calls before your lineups lock on Monday at 4 for weekly lineups. And then the only ones you might not get news on would be Brooklyn, Sacramento, Portland, and the Clippers. Those are the teams that go later on Monday night. All right, Dano's got to save his voice. Thank you to anybody that ignored football on a weird Sunday morning to watch this show live. I can't believe even a few of you are out there, but please do take a moment to like, rate, subscribe. Find me on social over at Dan Vespers. Again, no shows coming on Monday. We'll be back with you guys on Tuesday. We'll get our weekly buys. We'll recap the Giant Monday card and then kind of settle back into the usual grind. Continuing happy Hanukkah wishes to all of those out there, and we'll see you guys in 2 days. This is a show that should cover Monday. You got a special Sunday episode, but then you get nothing tomorrow. Okay, see you on Tuesday, everybody. So long for now.